Here to discuss 5 strategies to dominate your market is Corey Mosley, Company Principal with Mosley Automotive. Please give him a warm welcome.
Hi, I'm Corey Mosley, Principal of Mosley Automotive. Thank you for joining us in this video workshop, 5 strategies to dominate your market. Many of you watching this video would probably agree that it's tougher to sell a car today than it was in the last 5 years. For many of you, the last 18 months, you've seen such a transition in what it takes to do a delivery. How do you manage your reputation? How do you engage customers? How do you make sure your marketing is everywhere your customers are? So I'm going to share with you today in this video workshop 5 specific strategies that I believe will help enhance your opportunity to not only create a competitive advantage, but really move past your competition. So my ask here is simple. I'd like you to process this information and think about it as actions that you could be taking after the fact to start the conversation back at your dealership. Now, I always like to start with the idea of understanding where our strategies have come from. And the best analogy that I've seen to date is based on a recent study that was done several years ago that involved monkeys. Now, I want to start with the premise that I am not comparing us to monkeys, but it's such a great illustration. Here's what they did. They did a controlled experiment. They put 3 monkeys inside a controlled environment. They put a tree at the top of it, and they put bananas at the top of the tree. As you can imagine, the monkeys goes up, they get the bananas. So to set the control, they introduced water. Now, if we know anything about primates, we know primates hate to get wet. And we also know that monkeys are a highly intelligent species. So the monkey that was successful getting the bananas did not get wet. The other 2 were hosed down. So as you can imagine, their intelligence kicked in, and in a series of days, they were able to make the correlation that not getting the bananas means you got the consequence, which is getting hosed down. So the next day came, and that monkey went up to go get the bananas, and then he realized that today was the day things would be different, because the other 2 monkeys grabbed him, physically restrained him, and actually beat him up. So here's what they did. Now that they set the control, they took the water out of the equation. They took one of the original monkeys out. They put a new one in. He went up to grab the bananas. The other 2 physically restrained him and beat him up. They went and took the second original monkey out. The same process occurred. Finally, they took the last original monkey. Remember, for a series of days and for a series of monkeys, the water has not been part of the equation. They put the last and final monkey in. He goes to get the bananas. And of course, as you can imagine, he was physically restrained by the other monkeys. I want you to think for a moment, because that is the nature of our business. It is the quintessential idea of monkey see, monkey do. And what I mean by that is there were policies, procedures, and actions that were introduced to us 30 years ago, 40 years ago, or 50 years ago in our business, and we've done them all across the country, no matter where your dealership is located. There's certain things that we know. There's call and response. I can say certain phrases and strategies to you, and you'll know exactly what to say back to me. Yet most of you have not worked together in the same dealership. And that's our business. Here was the policy. Here was the procedure. Here's the road to the sale. And we're going to take that road to the sale and move it from East Coast to the West Coast. And nobody, and most of us, have not stopped to say, is it time to make a change? Or stop to say, why do we continue to do it this way? So I'm going to share with you some strategies to address that. Here's the other thing I'd like to point out. I'm going to challenge you in a certain area. I'm going to challenge you in an area known as the best practice. A lot of us talk about the idea of the best practice. We want to achieve the best practice. However, what I will share with you is the idea that mastering a best practice is really just mastering average, if you think about the origin. A best practice is designed from looking at data, looking at information, looking at a strategy over and over again, and arriving at an area where it's highly effective or the most effective based on the conditions. So we take that information, we roll it out and deliver it, we call it a best practice, and then inside your organization, you work on trying to get the best practice correct. However, while everybody's working on the best practice, there's somebody that's looking further down the road. I want that to be you. Here's a key question. When it comes to your team, as a decision maker watching this video, as an influencer in your store, as potentially an owner or a general manager, here's a question I'll ask you. Can you say with 100% confidence that your team And everyone that touches your customer believes that the consumer is better off having purchased from your dealership. See, this is a real reality. I have salespeople that will pull me aside when I'm doing work in a store, and they'll say, hey, Corey, I wouldn't use our service department if my life depended on it. That's a concern. Because how does the customer feel? How does that translate when the salesperson is talking to a customer about what is supposed to be your great and fantastic service department? Have you ever thought about that for a minute? How is your brand represented not just during work hours, but how is your brand represented after the day is over? What are your employees saying in the marketplace? Are they committed to the cause? Do they understand the mission of the dealership? Can you say that they believe and they take action on the factors that the customer is better off having purchased from them? Here's another question I'll ask you. I like to use this term itis. When you hear the term itis, anything with an itis is usually medical and it's usually bad. So if I said to you right now watching this video, when I say itis to you, what things come to mind? A lot of people might think of bursitis, bronchitis. They think of these medical conditions. So I ask you this question. Do you suffer from something I call who else-itis? Let me explain how who else-itis works. You look at a new process, you look at a new procedure, you look at a new tactic, you look at a new piece of software or a system. You like it, you might not understand it, but here's the linchpin question. You say, who else is doing it? And the determination, if you don't hear the dealers you know or names that you know in the industry, those things will drive your decision making. I challenge you to look past that, because here's what I don't want. You don't want all 18,000 dealers to be executing the same strategy as you. You don't want to look at something and have the opportunity to be first, and because you're not confident in how many other people are already on it, you make the decision to abstain, and you miss the idea of the competitive advantage. If you think about it today, our brands look very familiar. Many of the designers who are designing the product that you produce work somewhere else. Have you noticed Kias lately look like Audis? Why? Because they hired the former Audi design boss to come work for them. So now you have brands that look very familiar. Many of you have new facilities or facilities under construction or manufacturers who are highly suggesting that you go under construction. So now we have similar looking vehicles with similar features, and we're going to have brand new facilities to showcase to our customers. Where is the competitive advantage? So I challenge you on this idea of who else. I challenge you on this idea of not being afraid, ultimately, to go first in the marketplace. Now, when we talk about separation, because at the end of the day, that's what we're after. You're trying to create separation from your competition, whether direct make to make, or the dealer to your left or the dealer to your right with competitive brands. There's a couple things to remember when we talk about separation. Number one is going to be something I call the me plus 3 rule. What the me plus 3 rule states is that every action you're taking, there's at least 3 other dealers taking the same action. Now, I have access to all these high-level statistics, and I'm not sure where things like 1.33 customers come from. So I've seen statistics that say, hey, the average customer visits 1.333 dealers. I'm not sure how that's possible, but here's what I know for sure. I know if an internet lead comes in the building, chances are that internet lead has gone to some competitors as well. I know if a customer walks in your showroom, they're not a captive audience for you. I know if a customer calls to check inventory as a phone up, you're not the only dealership that they're calling. So the challenge here is to make sure your teams are equipped to realize that they don't have a captive audience. I listen to messages, I listen to phone calls all over the country, and I hear some cavalier attitudes in their messaging. I hear scenarios where they think they're the only person contacting the customer. Your sales teams have to realize that every action they take, there's at least other 3. So when they're leaving that voicemail message, when they're speaking with conviction, they have to know that they're constantly in a competitive environment. And education plays a huge role in that. I remember going shopping with a friend of mine, and we went to a Honda store, and we had mapped out the day, because obviously I don't have a ton of time to be shopping for cars all day. So we had mapped out the day. We knew that there were 3 essential vehicles that he wanted to look at that day, so our strategy was to go in early, do his test drives, look at numbers, and make a decision by the end of the day. So when we visited the Honda store, we got through the process. We had a decent walk around. We had a decent test drive. And as we were leaving, I said to the salesman, here's exactly what our plan is. We're going to look at these two other cars. I gave him the particulars of what we're going to look at. And I said to him, is there anything you'd like to tell us about the other cars or about your car? And I remember him pausing for a moment. And his answer was, gee, I hope you like our car better. And I thought about that for a moment. And the irony of this was, we were in the showroom and we were leaning on this big kiosk. And the kiosk was the information center where you are able to put in the information on your car and all of the competitors to see whose was better by standardization. He didn't utilize that. He didn't think through that process. He was treating us like a captive audience. We ultimately didn't buy the vehicle from there. We went with another brand. But that was a great opportunity. Where are those opportunities inside the store that your teams could be capitalizing on? Next up is the idea of the law of diminishing returns. So here's what the law of diminishing returns says. The law of diminishing returns says, if I continue to do things over and over again the same way, after a while, the effect of those things will be diminished. So when I think of the law of diminishing returns, I think of the question I will pose to you watching this video. Would you agree or disagree? Are the majority of the customers buying vehicles from your dealership considered to be first-time buyers? You're going to probably answer me no. So then we could probably agree also that the majority of your customers have in fact seen this movie before. Having that be the case, isn't it a great opportunity to examine some of the things that your sales teams are saying, some of the ways that your managers are processing information, the guest sheet, the training? People tell me all the time, Corey, we train every day here. And I'll go to a store and I'll see posters on the wall of training quotes and strategies. And then I'll walk over to those posters and I'll look at the copyright date on them. And it says copyright 1978. See, sometimes the challenge with the information age is the age of the information. The next thing I will share with you is this idea of leveraging the power of words. There's a great opportunity we have today in how we communicate. We have the opportunity to create words that drive the emotions of what people think. There's some people out there, they have great jobs. I wish I had some of these jobs that they have. There's a guy, his name's Dr. Frank Lutz. He's a wordsmith. He's written several books on the topics of words that work and words that matter. He's also a pollster in the political arena. And he creates words. He created words like WMDs, weapons of mass destruction. He created words like the death tax. We had this thing called global warming that you've probably heard of, right? And when you say global warming to people, they think of all these different things. A lot of people always answer me, Al Gore. They'll say the ozone. They'll say the polar bear. Like I have this vision that the last two polar bears are there and they're kind of like hanging on to the last ice cap, right? So we realized that there was a lot of controversy, right, behind that topic. So they went to him and they said, we need something better. We need something smarter than global warming because people are confused about it and it sounds terrible and we don't want the general public to be terrified of this. Now, if I ask you the question, have you heard of the term climate change before? You will tell me yes. Climate change was the softer replacement word for the phenomenon known as global warming. Many of us in technology, we probably agree that when you buy technology early, you pay more than the average person does later, right? If you have a 4K TV and you bought that 4K TV 18 to 24 months ago, you might have spent $5,000 for it. Now we can go into Best Buy and get a 4K TV for $499. But the marketplace and the electronics manufacturers, of course, don't want you waiting out that cycle. They still need to get the people that are willing to pay a premium. So they created a term. I always talk about the early iPhone customers, the early people who purchased that product. The frenzy customers, the ones that were camped out outside where the lines were around the building and the media was covering this release of this magnificent phone in 2007. So here was the question that I posed. Would you rather be called an early adopter, which is the terminology that was given for people who invest early in technology even though they overpay? Would you rather be called an early adopter than a crazy person who stood in line for our $599 phone? Makes a lot more sense, right? So we create words. We create strategies to determine what people hear. So I challenge you to start to examine at the touch points when you engage a customer, on the telephone, on the showroom lot. What's the age of the strategy you've been using to do that? If we agree our customers are more demanding, if we agree that our customers have more information, if we agree that it's tougher to convert, if we agree that there's more competition now than there has been previously in the marketplace, now would be a great time to have that conversation inside your dealership. The other thing I'll leave you with here when it talks about separation is the idea of a return to authenticity. See, a great tragedy for our business was many of us were trained many, many years ago that what we needed to do was be chameleons. What we needed to do was be actors. And that was the path to being successful at sales. Well, now in today's marketplace, where's the customer's BS meter? I'm going to argue it's sky high, it's through the roof, it's up here. So it's not advantageous to you to take on that approach. It's not advantageous to you to train on that ideology. I would encourage you, as you influence your teams, as you lead your teams, to make sure that they're returning to a place of authenticity. You got to be who you are because ultimately everyone else is taken. Okay, now I'm actually going to give you the 5 strategies. So I wanted to set the table on where we're going, how you're thinking, to look forward to dominating in your market. Let's talk about the 5. Number 1, I want to talk about the idea of mastering and marketing the why buy. Now, I've been talking about the why buy, and you may call it several different things. You may call it a why buy, you may call it a unique selling proposition, but ultimately it boils down to what you put out in the market that will influence a customer's desire to purchase from you. Now, the crazy thing is I've been talking about the why buy for at least over a decade. And yet I still see dealers across the country who have not put one into place or have not figured out really the winning aspects. So I'm going to share that with you today. What's important about the why buy is the why buy becomes ultimately the number one value builder inside your organization. So imagine for a minute if the phone rings, you've got a customer on the other end. They're checking inventory. They're interested in the vehicle. But you can start the conversation by telling them that every new or pre-owned vehicle comes with the Mosley Advantage, which includes A, B, and C. Imagine if a customer walks on the lot and they're interested in the vehicle that you have, and that's great, but before you start that conversation, you're able to introduce them to the fact that every new or pre-owned vehicle purchased from the dealership comes with the Mosley Advantage, which includes A, B, and C. And great, you get an internet lead that comes in, as many of you get thousands that come in. Instead of just talking about the quote and the information, you get to say, I'll be happy to assist you, but first, let me tell you, every new or pre-owned vehicle purchased from our dealership comes with the Mosley Advantage, which includes A, B, and C. See, people talk about value. Value is not new. The idea of value is not new. The execution of value is where most people don't win. So it creates value. It creates tangible value. The key to your why buy is going to be understanding the difference between tangible and intangible. Let me give you some intangibles. Intangibles are, we've been in business for 100 years. Intangibles are, we have 6 acres of property. Intangibles are, nobody sells them for less. See, we're very unique in our industry, right? We're the only industry, or one of the only ones that I know, where everyone can be number one and nobody's getting sued. You can go down the major thoroughfare of your town and have a billboard up where you're doing this. We're number one, northbound. And in the southbound lane, your competitor could be holding his finger up going, no, we're number one too. If Pepsi ran an ad that more people drink Pepsi in your town than Coke, and they didn't have the research and the data and the science to back it up and the surveys, somebody would probably be in trouble. You'd probably agree. Most of us won't go. We won't put up a billboard that says, last month, only 88.7% of customers liked our dealership, right? That doesn't happen. So that's why we have to work to get more creative in the marketplace and use the why buy as an advantage. Now, you've been in business 100 years, you're family owned and operated, you're nice people, all that's great. Take internal pride in that. But I have yet to meet a customer who came out of the F&I office or post-delivery when asked what made them buy the car. I've never, in all my career, had someone come up to me and say, Corey, you know what it was? It was that President's Award that did it for me. I saw it in the corner and it looked so beautiful and I just said, I gotta buy. Now, be proud of your awards. Be proud of your recognition. But those are intangibles in terms of what influences customers. We're nice people. I expect you to be nice. We have a knowledgeable staff. I expect your staff to be knowledgeable. Those do not, in my opinion, create influence. What will create influence? Let's look at a couple examples on your screen. Tangible items. So in some of your examples, we're looking at things like free state inspections. We're looking at things like this particular dealer in the example, he has a car wash. So of course he offers complimentary car washes on Saturdays to his customer. So you have a host of things that you can do. Money back guarantees. Now, everybody panics when you talk about a money back guarantee, but many dealers that you will talk to that have executed that strategy will tell you the percentage rate of literally having to take a deal back or take a vehicle back is extremely, extremely low. And we worked with dealers who in years have never taken a vehicle back in on a money back guarantee. But the buyer confidence, you'd probably agree, is significant. Now, it's not about you must do A, B, and C. It's the idea that you have to discern the difference between tangible and intangible. Also in the examples, 10% discounts on accessories, 15% off service contracts. These are things, of course, that additionally drive revenue. So the key is going to be make it tangible, and the other key is going to be that it has to be packaged, because that's how we make decisions. The buying public makes decisions on good, better, best. They make decisions on platinum, diamond, bronze. They make decisions on 1, 2, or 3. No one drives up to a drive-through window and says, I'll have 1 cheeseburger, I'll have some fries, and I'd like a Coke. They say, I'll have a number 1. They say, I'll have a number 2, or I'll have a number 3. The key is packaging. So you need to name it. It needs to be packaged and then marketed as a package for it to really have the value that you want. And then you must extend that across the network, in the showroom, on the telephone, on your internet department. I was doing a training. I had 70 salespeople, and they were in a big training room. And I said, let me ask you a question. What does someone get when they buy a vehicle from your dealership? They all screamed back at me, nothing. And I said, well, what are all these posters? They had posters on the wall, platinum program, gold program, bronze program, point system. I said, well, what's all this stuff on the wall? They said, oh yeah, that. So now let me ask you a question. What do you think the penetration, what do you think the value relative to the investment in that program is getting at the store level? If the salespeople's belief system isn't high on the program that they're offering, they certainly aren't executing on it. So it's not just about having a program. It's not just about naming the program. It's not just about making the program tangible. It's about the execution across all of your marketing and delivery channels. Okay, number 2. Many of us, myself included, we didn't have the luxury of going to MBA school or Wharton or these different places. However, there are certain lessons that we can learn from the teachings from these organizations. One of them I want to discuss is this idea of a business strategy known as FMA. FMA stands for First Movers Advantage. Now, there's ultimately 3 ways to accomplish an FMA strategy. One is really applicable to the retail auto industry. So there's 3 concepts here. Number 1 is technological. Number 2 is defensive. And then the third one is customer driven. So what I mean by that is on the technological side, that's what your OEMs do. So your OEMs are working now to introduce technology and strategies to outmaneuver the competition or be first to market. Think of autonomous cars. Think of some of the technology. Who was first to put Apple Play in? They're putting Alexa in the cars now. So it was about being first. So they're trying to lead the way in these areas. That's high level. The next is defensive. So what defensive is known as is locking down core primary providers, getting exclusivity. That's another thing that major corporations do to penetrate a market. You see that a lot in the franchise system where someone may buy a territory and then they control the whole territory and they can build their franchises. The one that makes the most sense in the retail environment is the third one, and that's customer. What that basically says is you want to try to capture and convert early adopters so you control the marketplace. Here's an example. For most of you watching this video, you have products, I should say, that are coming to market. You've got whether redesigns coming, new technology, refreshes, or vehicles from the ground up. What a lot of us do is we let the manufacturer lead the way, meaning the press release from the manufacturer, the information on the manufacturer's website. We let middlemen like Road and Track or Car and Driver educate our consumer. I challenge you because you have as much notice as anyone else about a new vehicle that's on the horizon. Start building your landing pages. Start marketing the ability to capture customers who have interest. How much more powerful would a new product launch be at your dealership if you had 5,000 customers' email addresses that were ready to be marketed to versus launching the vehicle and then waiting to see who came to see it? There's a shift in the selling process. I challenge you in this area. Traditional training, it made us use horsepower. It made us focus on this close. It made us hunters, and that was the training. My challenge back to you is to look at how you can take a finesse and influence standpoint. We can move the customer in the direction that we want them to go in through influence versus through horsepower. See, horsepower will allow you to close deals, but what does it do to your CSI? What does it do to your long-term prospects? All of the people who are smarter than me and conduct all the studies, they tell us one key thing, that customer experience will be the driver of our business and consumer decision-making over the next 5 years. Not brand loyalty, not dealer loyalty, but the customer experience and how they report on that. So how are you better positioned in your store if you have more of a hunter or closer mentality versus the ability to create influence? Customer experience will be huge. Customer experience must be taken into account as you think about the amenities, the offering inside your dealership. What you're looking at the screen is the little secret snapshot I took inside while I was in service for my own personal vehicle. This is a German luxury brand. You can see in the illustration, that's what I was up against. If you look down low, you can see there's a cooler there, as most of you might have, that's empty with nothing in it. The coffee, I don't know if it's hot. I don't know when it's been made. I don't know if it's available. I don't know where the cups are. I don't know anything. One of the highest grossing opportunities I've seen is for brands that are entry market or domestic to treat customers like they're luxury buyers. So if you're looking for ways to grow gross profit, that's a key way to do it. If you can elevate the experience beyond what someone was anticipating. Because to me, what you see in that image is unacceptable. Okay, number 3, VOC. What VOC stands for is voice of the customer. And many times we make decisions, especially when it comes to servicing our customers or making our customers happy, and we never involve the customer. A longtime dealer client of mine, he calls me and says, oh, I've got some extra money at the end of the year. I'm going to buy iPads for the service department, and we're going to buy iPads everywhere, and it's just going to be an iPad extravaganza. So I said, that sounds great. What did your customers have to say about this? He said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, you've got thousands of customers in your DMS. You've got thousands of customers in your CRM. You've got customers coming in every day to your service drive. Why not ask them what are some of the amenities that are most important to them, or what you do not have that they could have or they need or want? That would be more powerful. That would be a more educated way, and that would be a more strategic way to make the investment. He says, well, I never thought about it that way. You have all this data. You have this database. You have the power to find out in advance what would make your customers happy, instead of making the investment and determining nobody really cared. Also in a VLC strategy is social listening. How are you paying attention to what's being said about your brand across all the social channels? Are you relying solely on technology? Are you relying on a third-party company? Are you not paying attention to it at all? I remember sharing with a dealer that a disgruntled service customer had decided he was going to go online and buy a URL that was entitled the name of the dealership followed by the word sucks.com. So insert dealership, sucks.com, and then what he did was he bought keywords and pay-per-click advertising. So every time you typed in looking for information on that dealership, the number one position was that disgruntled customer who had bought the real estate to share his story. And in a free conversation society, he simply documented everything that happened. So he was completely within his rights to be able to do that. I shared that with the dealer, and really, dollar for dollar, it was a $1,300 issue that a guy's willing to spend hundreds of dollars on pay-per-click or thousands of dollars on pay-per-click. I brought it to his attention, and he said, yeah, I'm aware of it. We're going to look into it. It would be a 5-alarm emergency in the marketplace today for me to realize that every time somebody typed in the name of my dealership, there was a client there complaining or sharing information that I should be able to address. How are you listing now? What marketing channels are you on? Where are you determining if there's a hashtag out there about you that you don't know about? Now, you want to take social listening a step further? Go to competitive social listening. Here's what I mean by that. Having the ability to monitor the conversations that consumers are having about your competitors and create leverage. I remember I had an issue with a chair with Office Depot. I tweeted out about it. Staples tweeted me back and sold me the chair. Right now, someone's leaving a dealership and they're commenting on the experience that they had. Oh, I can't stand it. Oh, I don't want to ever come back to this dealership. And they're naming that dealership. They're hashtagging that dealership. They're @symboling that dealership. Your dealership can capitalize on that. There are dealers all over the country selling incremental sales based on the mistakes that the competitors are making. You have an opportunity, if you implement a competitive social listening strategy at your store, to capitalize on that as well. Number four is emotional intelligence. I want you to leverage emotional intelligence. So much of what we do is really psychology, so what that would tell us is studying psychology will help us execute better with our customers, especially as our customers' needs, wants, desires, and demands continue to change. Now, when I talk about this idea, I'm talking about several things. Number one, I'm talking about the understanding that the head is attached to the price. Many of your sales teams, they execute a strategy based on analytical behavior, based on thought behavior. They ask a customer, what do you think about the test drive? What do you think about the numbers? And every time you do that, you activate the customer's analytical nature, not their emotional nature. Because the head is attached to the price, but the heart is attached to the wallet. So my challenge to you in training, in implementing, in thought leadership, in moving your teams forward is the idea that they need to start to understand the connection there and also start to expound and expand outside of the buyers that they're engaging. Right now, many of your teams do the best job of selling to the customers who are just like them. As you look at the on-screen graphic, my question is, the hidden gem here is who are you not selling? Who are you missing? Who are your teams not engaging because they're not emotionally intelligent enough to connect with that buyer? You ask a sales manager, has someone ever come up to you and said, oh, that salesman was pushy? Most managers would go, yes, I'm sure that's happened at some time in my career. It wasn't that the salesperson was pushy. It was that the salesperson didn't understand the needs and the communication needs of the customer in front of them. See, the majority of the buying public, they're non-confrontational by nature. What I mean by that is the average consumer will go to a restaurant, have a bad experience, leave a tip, never come back. See, they're not high A personalities. They're not high alpha males, alpha females, like some of you that might be watching this video. My aunt, she's tough. She's got vouchers for the next 10 years to eat at Ruby Tuesdays. Because if they make a mistake, she's on the phone with somebody at corporate to tell them about it. But that's not how the majority of the buying public is. So they tell your sales teams things like, oh, well, we're going to hold off. Oh, follow up with us a little later. And then you never get them back on the phone. You never get them back in the dealership. And when they tell you things like they're going to hold off, what they mean is they're holding off for 36 months because that's the term of the lease of the new vehicle from the other dealer that's in their driveway. Do your salespeople, does your management team execute on the strategy as you see in the diagram here? Can they quickly make the adjustments needed to service the customers in the buying strategies and buying personalities displayed here? Think versus feel becomes the question when we talk about emotional intelligence. So what we said earlier about the head and the price and the heart and the wallet, here becomes the key. Stop asking questions about how they think. It's not what do you think, Mr. Customer, it's how you feel. Not how did you think about the test drive or what did you think about the car? How did you feel when you were driving the vehicle? It's not how you think about the numbers, it's how do you feel about them. That small shift will change how your customer processes information, which means it will change the outcome potential of what you want. You want to protect gross profit, you want to protect profitability, you want to earn a living, you want to increase sales production. That's the path to start to do it. Finally, number five. Number five is going to be the idea of team building in a modern environment. I'm sharing with you on your screens right now 5 keys to the path of increasing sales based on employee development. As you look on the screen, you're going to see grow them, involve them, reward them, inspire them, know them. You must execute this 5-part strategy to build a winning team. You don't need people who come in, clock in, do their job, and leave. In today's marketplace, it demands that your employees are evangelists. That becomes the key. You need evangelists. You need people who will run out in the middle of traffic for you. Because just doing their job will not deliver the customer experience that will meet the demands of the consumer. And if you can master these 5, how many do you master right now? But if you want to build a cohesive team, master these 5 items. I'm going to give you 3 steps as we start to close out. I'm going to give you 3 steps to attack and approach any process. Examine any process that you have in your store. Number 1 is, what are we doing now? Number 2 is, why do we do it that way? And number 3 is there a better way? Take any process you want. Oh, well, how do we move a customer from meet and greet to delivery? What are you doing now? So many of you don't have documented processes. When we visit stores many times, I'll take an owner and I'll speak to them separately. I'll take a general manager and I'll speak to them separately. I'll take a general sales manager and I'll speak to them separately. And I'll ask them the same exact question. More often than not, I get 3 different answers. That tells me there's an opportunity to build greater cohesion. What are you doing now? Why do you do it that way? You want to know if you're primed for a breakthrough inside your dealership processes? When you ask that second question, what are we doing now? And then why do we do it that way? If your answer is, because that's the way we've always done it, you're primed for a breakthrough. And the neat thing is when it comes to number 3 tells us, because here's what we know. We know the information that you need. We know the growth information. We know how to get better is out there in the marketplace. It's just a matter of going after it, finding it, and then believing that you need to execute. Re-examine the process. Understand that practicality causes delay. Emotion will drive action. Steve Jobs, he's quoted on many occasions. One of my favorites is, he says, you cannot mandate productivity. It is an organization's job to equip its team with the tools that they need to be successful. I also ask you to make sure your people are focusing on the presentation to the customer, focusing on mastering the first impression. Here's your action plan. Document your approach. Examine the points of conversation and conversion inside your store. Where are the areas where your team meets the customer? That's where you need to get started. Also, reevaluate. And as you look at your processes, ask yourself this: have we developed processes and strategies that are customer-focused or dealer-focused? Were they built to make it easier for your dealership to do your job or to move a customer through your process? Or were they designed to be user-friendly and customer-focused for your consumer? All right, finally, I keep this graphic up. This graphic is several years old. In fact, they maybe make sure that I write at the top of it what not to do. I share it, as many people have mementos. They have things on their desk, right? Some people wear different things to remind them of things that they don't want to forget, or so they can keep perspective. I share this with you on the screen today to make sure you keep perspective. If you look at this information, this is a real ad that went out to thousands of customers. This is an email that went out to thousands of inboxes. It's got everything on it, right? It's got extended hours. They're having a sale. They've got a tent. They've got discounted pricing. They've got 0% interest. They've got all these things going to happen. They're giving out hot dogs and popcorn and candy and maximum value for the trade. But what's missing? Some of you might catch it quick, but I'm going to give you just a second to look at it a little bit more. What's missing from this email that went out to thousands of customers? The dealership. All this effort, all this energy went into building this campaign to send out to the customer, and they never even told people where to go. I share this with you to say CSA. Always make sure we're taking a common sense approach. Sometimes we go looking for the granular item. We go looking for the advancement, and we miss some of the obvious. So I challenge you to keep that in mind as you move forward, and I wish you continued success. Thank you.